Hey guys, this is Matt from the Skeptic podcast. I'm just letting you know that you are about to listen to an episode of the show recorded before we chose the name Skeptic Squared, and our contact information is different from what you will hear during this recording. If you would like to contact us, you can email us at skepticsquaredpodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit the show's blog at www.skepticsquaredpodcast.blogspot.com. As always, if you like what you hear, please rate us and leave a review. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. This is the Circle Squared podcast.
A safe place to make light of sacred things.
My name is Matt.
And I'm Corinne.
And in this program, we will be discussing current events related to religion, atheism, and skepticism. Our goal is not to insult believers,
Although that will probably happen from time to time.
but rather to share our point of view on these topics in a way which will benefit and entertain others.
Or maybe we just want to stroke our own egos. You decide.
Hello and welcome to the Circle Squared podcast. Today is Sunday, November 15th, 2015, and with me is my lovely wife, Corinne.
Hello again.
Today we will be discussing a mass resignation event from the LDS Church held yesterday in Salt Lake City, Utah, as well as a few articles related to recent Mormon homophobia. If you would like to contact us, you can email us at circlesquaredpodcast@gmail.com. You can also view the show's blog at www.circlesquaredpodcast.blogspot.com and leave a comment there. If you like what you hear, please rate us and leave a review on whatever platform you find us. So, yesterday was the big LDS mass resignation. Corinne and myself were able to attend, and we also met up with one of my siblings, my sister Megan, was able to come as well. She lives in Salt Lake. And after the event happened, we all got into my car and just recorded like kind of our impressions of the event, kind of, what happened, what it meant to us, what it means for the LDS Church, that kind of stuff. So let's start by playing that clip for you guys. It's about 25 minutes long. And afterwards, we'll have a few more things to say, and we'll talk about some other related articles. All right. How are we doing?
Great.
Good? Doing good?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to do kind of an informal thing. So today was kind of a monumental day. We just got finished with what was a mass resignation from the LDS Church that was held in Salt Lake City, Utah. It was it was over a lot of stuff that people were leaving the church over were due to the recent policy change that we talked about last week, involving children not being allowed to be baptized in the church if they live with gay parents. And so in the last week or so, there's been a lot of talk on social media. There's been a lot of people calling for resignations and different protests. And let's see, there was the change.org stuff still going on that, trying to get people to boycott events at BYU, Brigham Young University, and to boycott participation with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. So with me today is my wife, Corinne, and my sister, Megan, our very first guest on the podcast. Hi, Megan.
Hi.
So Megan's feeling a little under the weather. She's got a little bit of a cold, right?
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
Over it.
So far, your voice sounds okay. Hopefully it stays that way. We have some water. I wish we had brought some cough drops, but
I have some in my pocket.
Oh, do you? Okay, cool. So, all right, we should be able to make it through this then. So maybe let's start with some general impressions. Like, what did you guys think about the event? Megan, you want to start?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of people there. There's more people than the speakers could handle. It was hard to hear the speakers.
Yeah, that's true. They had a smaller PA system, probably something like a 500 watt, 1,000 watt system, something like that, which is fine for like a small gathering. You're looking at like maybe a couple hundred people, like you're solid. But this event, just on the Facebook page that they made for it, had over 1,000 people RSVP, and over 2,000 people say that they were interested in going. My estimation is that there were probably about 2,500 to 3,000 people that showed up to this event, which I think is just amazing. But way, way more than their PA system could handle as far as getting the word out. I don't know, anything to add to that? Just tons and tons of people?
Yeah, lots of people. A long line to get the signature from the attorney, the lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So on Reddit, for the last few months, there's been a lawyer who, up until this last week, has remained anonymous, who has been offering to represent people trying to leave the church so that the resignations go smoothly, because the Mormon church is notorious for trying to drag out the process or get local leaders involved, that kind of stuff. And legally, once you give the church your resignation letter, once they receive it, you are officially out of the church. But the church doesn't always honor that. They try to get people to stay, that kind of stuff. So a lawyer kind of helps alleviate some of that. So they had this lawyer that's been doing a lot of stuff with the ex-Mormon subreddit, and he had this goal for this year to have 500 people come to him for resignations, that he would represent them and do it all pro bono. And once the news that came out last week for the Mormon Church not baptizing gay or children living with gay parents, within the first 72 hours of that announcement, he had over 1,500 people come to him and ask for him to represent them. And then plus all of the people at this event, I mean, the guy has to be having like thousands and thousands of people asking him for resignations. So that's kind of cool. And at the event, they had a booth where he would, answer questions, sign documents, whatever you guys needed. And the line for this thing was probably at its peak, probably about 400 or 500 people standing in line.
Yeah, it wrapped halfway around the park.
Yeah, like there was a ton of people. We stood in it for a little while.
Yeah, we moved like 10 feet in half an hour.
Yeah, right. So we actually went there with the intention of sending our resignation letters with everybody else, 'cause they were going to have a march from the park that they were meeting at down to this specific mailbox, have this little, they had cameras there, people being interviewed for like local news agencies. And we participated in the march and everything, but we didn't actually get our resignation letters sent in the mailbox because we decided not to stand in the super long line and instead go to the speakers and listen to what the speakers were saying, because you couldn't hear it from where the line was. So we're gonna do ours later. We're gonna email it to the attorney, and hopefully that goes through no problem. So as of right now, we are still members, although it feels like we're not.
Yeah. Mentally, we committed.
Right. So let's talk about the speakers. There were 4 or 5 speakers, 6 speakers. Any thoughts about any of the speakers?
Well, first of all, it was hard to hear.
It was very
A lot
hard.
of times that you're like clapping along, you're not really sure what the person just said. Like, I don't know if I should clap, but I know that it was, whatever they said was something supportive. So
Yeah.
I'll
So of the speakers that you could hear, did you hear anything good or profound, helpful?
the one that I remember the most was the man who wanted to keep it out of the media.
Yeah, read the letter from his daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this gentleman, I recognize his face. I don't know his name. He was involved in a a lawsuit or a series of lawsuits about a year ago or so that was instrumental in overturning the ban on gay marriage in Utah. I don't remember exactly what his involvement was, but he was somehow involved, and he was asked to speak at this event, and he read a letter or a Facebook post, I think it was,
I think
from
he just
his...
approached them. He wasn't asked to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But he had a Facebook post from his daughter, his teenage daughter, I think, who requested that her post not be publicized, not be part of media. So, but it was very touching. I thought it was a very interesting perspective. Hearing her story, especially since this man he was gay, right? He was in a straight marriage. He was told by his church leaders that if he went on a mission, got married in the temple, had kids, that he would essentially be cured of his homosexual urges. So he did it. Like, he went on the mission, got married in the temple. He has a few kids, and after 17 years, he just couldn't do it anymore. And so this policy, this is one of the things that hit home to his daughter, was that it is so close to their situation. The fact that she has a dad that's gay, so for her it was very emotional. There were a lot of things that people were saying that were hurting her. So yeah, that was a really good talk. Any other speakers? Silence, crickets. Well, the very last speaker I thought was really interesting. He looked like he could be a front man to an indie band.
Yeah.
What did he say? I knew that today would be something like a testimony meeting and a funeral, so he dressed appropriately. He was all dressed
Like
in
a
black.
suit.
It's pretty clever. But yeah, he had a really interesting speech, I thought.
Yeah. He just approached them too, so he wasn't asked to speak either.
Yeah. And most of these, probably by the end of the night, will be up on YouTube, I would think.
Yeah.
They're probably already on YouTube.
He did share a couple of awful stories, though. I remember that.
That speaker?
Yeah.
The last speaker?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Overall, I think his message was pretty upbeat and positive.
Yeah.
Because it kind of was like this rallying sort of effect that it had on the crowd, where he would say one thing, like, who's going to stand up, who's going to do the right thing, and the crowd was like we are.
Yeah.
Which is a great message, because that's kind of the whole point. Like here is the church, the Mormon church, enacting these policies that's having a negative effect on a segment of our community, and who's going to stop them? Well, it has to be the membership. Nobody else can do it, And, having a few thousand people hand in their resignation letters, that really does send a pretty big message to the church, I think.
Yeah. If not to the leadership, at least to the general membership.
Yeah.
Right. Any other thoughts on any of the speakers?
Not really.
Not really? Okay. So another part of the event was to march around Temple Square, which was kind of cool. I haven't been to Temple Square in a long time.
Yeah. Avoid that place.
Yeah. So they have, the temples there, obviously. They have the visitor center there. They have different museums surrounding it. The convention center, or not convention center. Conference center.
I keep calling it
I
that.
keep calling it the convention center. Yeah. What did you say? Mormon Con?
Yeah.
That's what we should start calling General Conference. Mormon Con. Yeah. So the last thing for the event, we just did another march, went all the way from the park that we were at all the way around Temple Square. And the cool thing about that, I thought, was that as we were marching, I can't even count how many cars were driving by honking in support.
Honking and waving.
Honking, waving, giving thumbs up, whistling. I saw people looking down at the crowd, the marching people marching from the conference center.
From the roof.
From the roof, yeah, up at their little terrarium up at the top, looking down and just like staring at us. I made eye contact a couple of times with some people that were inside the Temple Square, and they were just kind of amazed and just slightly terrified, I think, a little bit. It's like all these ex-Mormons wandering around Temple Square
With rainbow flags.
with rainbow flags. Like, what's going to happen? But of course, nothing did happen. Nothing like bad. Nothing violent. Yeah, it was very peaceful. I've never participated in anything like this before. Megan, you've participated in, was it the Pride Rally or Pride Parades?
I've gone to the Pride Parades, not been in it yet, but yeah, I've been to the festivals and things.
Yeah. How would you say is the general, timbre of those sorts of things?
More flamboyant.
Whatever do you mean?
Yeah. I mean, with this crowd, you could definitely tell, obviously, there are girls holding hands with girls, guys holding hands with guys. But it was more like felt more like just a general crowd versus the gay pride parade. Everyone's just out there very
Right.
flamboyantly.
Right.
This one,
It was nice to see a span of ages, I think,
Yeah.
at this one.
Yeah.
Down from kids to like really old people.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, because a lot of times when people talk about gay issues, they mention that younger kids, the like millennial age kids, are highly in support of gay rights, gay marriage, all that stuff, which isn't really surprising because of social media and the way that they just kind of talk about it more openly. Like the idea of calling somebody like a fag or other derogatory terms, which when I grew up was just commonplace. Like people called other kids that all the time, just because. But that kind of stuff is dying down a lot, and the general attitude of a lot of younger kids is more accepting of gays. But yeah, there were tons of middle-aged people. There were a handful of older couples that were clearly, committed in, their relationships. I thought that was pretty interesting as well. I noticed that as,
Yeah.
which was kind of cool because you don't always get that, that perspective.
Well, because quite often something like this is painted as it's just like our generation that's in support of it. But seeing older people and a lot younger people, it's like this is an issue across the board for everyone. And it's not going to go away when we get older.
Right,
It's not
a
something
fad,
you grow out of.
not a trend.
It's going to stay
Well, it is a
around.
trend, but yeah,
Right.
it's going to stick around. It's a legitimate civil rights movement.
And I think quite often it's discounted.
Yeah. Yeah. Were there any posters or signs that stood out to you guys?
I don't know about posters and signs. Not really.
There were a
stood out.
few that caught my eye. I can't remember what all of them were. Most of them were just like, like family's important, children are important. This policy is bad. It's bad for society. Like those kind of things.
Some were quoting the second article of faith.
Yeah. This leads me to my next question. Any fun T-shirts?
I know what t-shirt you're
no
talking
one
about.
knows that I'm a lesbian.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Yeah, I like that one.
And the Hail Sagan was a good one.
Yeah, Hail Sagan. Sagan, S-A-G-A-N.
Yeah, with a picture of a pentagram.
Yeah, that was fun. On an older gentleman. That was
Yeah,
good.
that was good.
There were a few other ones. There were lots of, I saw a few for the FSM, Flying Spaghetti Monster, Pastafarianism.
Yeah, there were a few for that.
That was kind of fun. I'm wearing a T-shirt that has a stick figure man throwing away different religious symbols into a wastebasket, and my sweatshirt is an FSM sweatshirt. Corinne, you have a fun shirt.
Mine's Hitch Slap. Just picture of Christopher Hitchens and a
Yeah.
handprint.
And a handprint. So anybody who's not familiar with Christopher Hitchens, He was a prolific writer, especially when it comes to religious issues, atheism. He wrote the book God Is Not Great, which is one of my favorite books on religion and atheism. And if you're looking for something to do for your afternoon, go to YouTube and look up Hitch Slap. You will not be disappointed. It was one of the first things that I stumbled up on of his, and it was just all these like news clips and interviews and debates where he just has the most clever one-liners and comebacks to all sorts of different religious arguments and conservative ideas, and he's just a very witty British man. Anyway, any other thoughts about the event?
Well, the box that we were putting all the letters in was overflowing by the end. We had to find other places to collect the letters.
Yeah, because there was still a line wrapping around the park. People getting their letters signed.
Yeah, they announced that. Was it before the last speaker, or just after the last speaker?
It was just after the last speaker, just before we walked around Temple Square.
Mm-hmm. So most of the people had already given their letters or put their letters in the box, and the letters, I guess, were overflowing and falling on the ground because there were so many people that put their letters into that mailbox. Yeah, and then we did the march around Temple Square, and then we left. I don't know if anybody stuck around. There were lots of local news crews. It looked like there were some people maybe doing like I don't know, podcast type stuff or different recording devices. I just took a quick video, like a panoramic shot of the crowd, just because there were so many people there. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, so what do you think the effect of this is going to have on, the church or the issue itself?
I don't think it's going to change anything immediately.
Yeah.
Not with the leadership, anyway.
Yeah. It has actually had a little bit of an effect because, was it yesterday, the First Presidency finally came out and tried to clarify, quote unquote, the issue.
Yeah, their clarification just is reiterating everything they've already said. It's nothing new.
Yeah, that's kind of my takeaway as well. They seem to change it a little bit so that it's not quite so broad.
Well, they did clarify one thing, the whole if a child of gay parents has already been baptized, then he or she can still participate in all the other ordinances.
Right.
That was clarified. That's the only clarification they gave.
Right.
Everything else is just reiterated.
Right, so once you're in, you're in.
Yeah, once you're in, you're in, but...
That was a concern that a lot of people, especially on Reddit that I saw, were expressing, like there was one kid that I think was... there's a man on a unicycle. There's a man on a unicycle going past us. That's fun. I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, there was an issue where a boy wasn't going to get the priesthood. He had just turned 12 like this week or something. He was supposed to get the priesthood, and then this whole issue came up, and so he wasn't able to get the priesthood. It sounds like the way that they've phrased it now, that kid can now get the priesthood.
Because he's already been baptized.
Because he's already been baptized. But still, I mean, the point... Okay, so one person, one of my friends on Facebook, tried to use this clarification to kind of justify, what was going on. I won't say his name. He's one of my more conservative friends, and he basically posted what the First Presidency said as this clarification. It just said, basically what we just talked about. And I responded, after one of my other friends responded much more vitriolically. I responded, basically the church has come out loud and clear that gay, homosexuals are not welcome in the Mormon church, and is up to local individual members to decide whether or not that's a good thing. And that's really what it comes down to. And, people often comment on how the Mormon church is a top-down organization rather than a bottom-up organization. leadership gets revelation, so to say, and they create policies, and then everybody else has to step in line. And that's generally how things go with the Mormon Church. But this week, I think we've seen how, at least in part, when enough people voice that they have a concern with a certain policy or doctrine, the leadership will listen. Like their clarification, which does fundamentally change at least part of the original policy that was stated last week, shows that, a groundswell movement, the bottom-up theory can actually happen even within the Mormon Church. It's a lot harder.
To a certain extent.
To a certain extent, yes. It's a lot harder, but I think that it can happen. It's more an issue of whether or not enough people will back it so that it can happen. Anyway.
Yeah. It all depends on the financial aspect, I think, for them before they change anything officially.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that this will do. People resigning, that means that they won't be giving the church their money. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the ways that you can kind of stick it to the Mormon Church. Yeah. And I have heard actually an interesting alternative to resigning. I have heard a few people mention that they won't be resigning. Instead, they will be suspending their tithing until the Mormon Church can come up with a more compassionate policy. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard from those same people whether or not the new clarification counts as such an accommodation that they would start paying tithing again. But it's an interesting idea because that is something that the church really does care about, tithing. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens. This is all very fresh. It's all very new. But we'll see.
Yep.
All right. Any final words? Final comments?
Nope.
No? Everybody said their piece?
Yep.
Cool. Megan, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
We'll try to hook up later to possibly do an interview with Megan and have her on to voice her opinion on some of the other issues that we might have. Cool.
Yep.
Cool stuff. All right. Thanks for listening. Ciao. Okay, so that was our clip. Those were our first impressions after the event. After we had finished recording everything and we had gone our separate ways, Corinne and I were driving home and decided that there were a few other things that we wanted to talk about. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was that after or during, especially the last two speakers, the gentleman who read his letter from his daughter, mm-hmm. and then the other gentleman who shared his experience with Mormon homophobia and who's on the right side and who's going to stand up for what's right. The guy that looked like a front man mm-hmm. for a band. The overall feeling of the event during those two speeches in particular was very emotional. It was very upbeat, very positive. It was the sense of community, and it's the sort of thing that if a believer, like a Mormon, like faithful believing Mormon, was at this event and they were in that kind of state of mind where they were, hearing things supportive of what they believed and that sort of thing, that they would identify that as the Spirit of God telling them that this is true doctrine or something along those lines, something inspired by God. Any thoughts on that?
Well, we talked about that a few days ago, too. I remember in the car talking about how patriotism felt kind of the same way. People with, sports teams, they just have this, they get worked up over something that they really believe in, or mm-hmm. and how Mormons attribute that to the Spirit, and it's the same thing, I think, that everyone felt yesterday, too. Right,
and I think the takeaway is that it's a common thing. It's part of being a person, a human. Yeah. It's not this supernatural thing going on. Right,
it's an emotion. It's an emotional response to mm-hmm. something you believe in.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember having similar kinds of feelings watching, inspirational movies
Right, or listening to music.
Yeah, certain kinds of music. Like the fact that people have sort of conditioned themselves to call this feeling the Spirit of God doesn't necessarily mean that it is the Spirit of God.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of thing that a lot of religions rely on, especially Mormons, and I know of a few other, like, more mainstream Christian groups. You go to these events, you go to sacrament meeting if you're a Mormon, or if you go to, a sermon, especially like those big stadium type sermons, the big mega churches that are so popular these days. Like, there's tons of emotion. There's this big feeling, this big hoorah, this camaraderie going on, and believers.
It's a pep rally.
It's a pep rally. Yeah, believers really do think that all of this stuff going on is a sign from God, and it's not. At least they haven't been able to demonstrate that it is,
right?
Or how it's any significant way different than what I would feel watching, say, Saving Private Ryan, or another movie that I like, or whatever. So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. Like, going to this event, like, there was definitely a sense of community. Everybody was very supportive. I saw a comment this morning on the Facebook page for the event. Some guy was saying how unnecessary this was, and like, why are you even doing this? Having this big, angry mass resignation event. Why don't you just leave and all that kind of stuff?
Pretty jubilant the whole time.
Yeah, like, it was very positive.
There wasn't any anger or animosity.
Yeah.
And the first lady that even got up and spoke, we didn't hear all of it, but she did say something about, we want this to be a happy thing. This isn't to go around yelling at people. This is, we want to spread joy. We want people to be accepting.
Yeah, and that was definitely the feeling that I got throughout the entire thing. Like, even when we were marching around Temple Square, we got a couple looks from some of the people inside Temple Square, where they were kind of confused. There was one young lady and her husband. She looked kind of scared a little bit. I think it was mostly because she didn't understand what was going on, didn't know who we were, what the purpose was. But like, like the crowd of people that were there for the event, it was all very positive, very supportive. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about, leading up to this event, I have been feeling more and more like I should remove my name, if for no other reason than the fact that I consider myself an atheist. I don't believe in the core tenets of the church. There's no reason for me to be a member of the church. And I've felt that way for a long time. I just haven't had really a reason to go out and do it, like an opportunity to go out and do it. It's just been kind of sitting on the shelf. Corinne, on the other hand, her deconversion from Mormonism is much more fresh. It's much more recent. So maybe talk about some of your reservations for resigning.
For not doing it right away?
Right.
Well, the biggest one was having my family find out. That was the only reason I didn't right away. That really was the only reason.
Yeah.
And I didn't really see the point, I guess, either. It's like, it's just in a building far away in a different city that says that I'm a member of this church, but I mean, I don't even know where my records are right now, if they're at my home ward or not, but I don't know, it just didn't seem like a necessary thing. But I don't know, I guess over the past couple months it's just been, it just felt so stupid. Everything revolving around the church, everything, like any decision even that's made in Utah, whether the church is directly involved or not, it's like, the church is involved, and it just started piling up. And then this came up, and it was like the opportunity just presented itself, like, let's do it. Yeah. So, yeah, that's.
So are you still hesitant to talk to your parents about it, or worried about it?
I don't plan on talking to them about it. I'm not going to bring it up.
Yeah.
It's not really their business, I guess. I don't know. I don't like talking about things like that. Never have. Never felt comfortable with that. So, no, I don't plan on talking to them about it. Although that could just lead to an awkward confrontation later down the road if they do find out, but oh well, I'm not bringing it up. Especially this time of the year.
Because of the holidays?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final words or thoughts about the event? Anything else you wanted to talk about?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's I think all I had as well. So some of the other things that have happened in recent news related to this, or at least it seems that they're related. Last week, after the big announcement that the LDS Church was going to be restricting membership to children of gay parents, there was a judge in Utah who ruled that he was going to take away a child that was in foster care with a lesbian couple. I think this is in central Utah, Price or something like that. And one of the reasons that he decided to make this decision, let's see if I can find it in the article that I found. This is an article from Washington Post. Let's see. What do you see it?
Was it that research suggesting children?
Yes. Okay, so the couple, Becky Pierce and April Hoagland, said the judge cited, quote, research suggesting children do better in homes with heterosexual parents. Meaning because they're lesbians, because they're gay, that means that they're unfit to be parents.
Which is funny because I think they have 2 biological children.
Oh, do they?
Uh-huh.
It doesn't say anything about that in this article.
It's something that I read. I'm pretty sure it said that they had 2 of their own kids.
Interesting.
I don't know that for sure though. So.
Right. So this couple is trying to adopt, and they're going through all the legal proceedings. They have the way they put it, blessing of the birth mother. So they have permission from the birth mother. She's on board with it. And this judge is essentially standing in the way. And the reason that they are citing is that they are gay. And this judge feels that a heterosexual home will be better for the child than a homosexual home. There were a couple other things in here. It talks about, so here it says, concern that the research has shown that children are more emotionally and mentally stable when raised by a mother and a father in the same home.
Does it ever cite what research they're reading?
Not in this article. It doesn't.
'Cause that's not what I read.
Right. So this is kind of a common view that gets tossed around a lot. I've heard some members of my family say similar things. I've seen a lot of this kind of stuff come up on like social media. And as more and more researchers do this, the research, like actually look into it, sociologists and psychologists look into this, they find that the only real negative correlation that can be found between people being raised by gay parents versus their heterosexual parents is that kids raised in a gay household get bullied more. Mm-hmm. And that's where all of this emotional turmoil comes from. It's not that
it's outside the home.
Right. It comes from outside of the home. It's because as a society, a lot of people don't respect homosexuals. They have lots of homophobic views. They have lots of prejudices, and they treat children being raised by homosexuals poorly. And this is where all the strife and emotional turmoil comes from. Mm-hmm. At least that's what the research seems to be suggesting, at least the most recent research that I've seen. Uh-huh.
Even the American Psychological Association, from what I've read,
mm-hmm.
says that there isn't any real difference between children being raised in a homosexual household and heterosexual household.
Right. So that's the next line to the first line that we read. It says, but major medical associations, such as the American Psychological Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics, have said sexual orientation is unrelated to one's ability to be a good parent. Yeah. So, whatever...
that'd be like saying that a single parent can't raise a child on their own because
mm-hmm.
because of the absence of either the mother or the father. Like, that just doesn't make sense.
Right. And that's a counterpoint that a lot of people have made, saying... Like you guys are targeting this one group of people that don't fit the ideal that you're proposing, but there's lots of other groups, like say single parents or parents that get divorced, mm-hmm. That are way more common,
right?
and you can build a stronger case, especially for divorced parents, of having a detrimental effect on the psychology of the kid's development or whatever. But they're not going after those groups because those groups are either already legal or, like many of the people that are pushing against gay marriage, are in those camps.
Yeah.
You know,
In those camps, it's probably harder too, just to like even target that. 'Cause it's not something that's apparent walking down the street.
that's true.
necessarily.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was the judge's initial response as of last week. This article that we're reading today, which was from 2 days ago, the 13th, says Utah judge stays order to remove foster child from the home of lesbian couple, meaning that he reversed the order. And one of the big reasons why he seems to have changed his mind, or at least isn't going to go through with it just yet, is because of social pressure and pressure from people like Hillary Clinton and other big names coming down and saying, or even the, I think it was the governor of Utah came down and said he wasn't quite sure if he is following the law.
Because he was going to remove them immediately from the home.
Right. So instead, like the compromise that they came up with is that on December 4th, they will have a hearing to determine the best interests of the child.
Can stay until then.
And the child can stay until then. Exactly. But I mean, honestly, the fact that he's done this stay of the order right now, and all of the pressure that he's getting from, the media and from, big name politicians, my guess is that he's not going to actually go through with it.
Well, I would just open a can of worms too. He'd have to
Right.
go like he's just doing it to one couple. He'd have to go through and find all of the gay or lesbian couples that have adopted anyone or are in the
Right.
process of adopting anyone and holding that too.
Right, and
Having
that's
that happen.
exactly, and that's a point that this article makes. The agency that's doing the adoption process, I don't see where it is. I can't find it. Anyway, they made the point that they have given lots of kids to gay couples in the year or 2 years that gay marriage has been legalized in Utah. And there hasn't been a problem, or at least not like a significant problem. And so they're saying, like, why is this even an issue? Why is this coming up now? Well, the reason why it's coming up now, some people are speculating at least, is because of the LDS Church's stance that they came out with a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, which, I mean, the timing seems to fit.
Right.
I don't know if that's actually...
It could be a coincidence.
Yeah, it could be a coincidence. I don't know if it's actually what this judge is going for, or if it really is a motivation, but it is suspicious. But more than anything, it is indicative of the Mormon prejudice against homosexuality. One other article that I found, I actually posted this on my Facebook page. It's from fox13now.com, which is Salt Lake City's local Fox News Association, whatever. Anyway.
News is laughable.
Well,
Sometimes.
I've found that local Fox channels are more reliable than Fox News, the national organization, where you get like, Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity. The Fox News, the organization, the national organization, is ridiculous, and I agree. Like it barely counts as news. It is extremely slanted. But this is just the local Fox News program. It says LGBTQ advocates see spike in suicide calls after announcement of LDS policy change, officials say. So what that means is there's a local suicide hotline in Utah called Crisis Line. And they, after this announcement that came out, that the LDS Church was going to be doing things differently with kids of gay parents, they saw a spike, more people calling with LGBTQ issues. So more gay kids are calling in to the suicide hotline directly or immediately after this announcement was made. If that doesn't show you the severity of the issue, I don't know what does.
Right.
Like this, like even if it doesn't directly affect very many people, which is something that I've heard some people say, that the policy is only going to affect a few people. The fact is, it affects all LGBT people because it creates this environment of prejudice and homophobia and misunderstanding. It makes people feel unsafe. It makes them feel misunderstood, like there's something wrong with them. And a lot of times, especially now that the LDS Church seems to be kind of weeding out the more progressive types, the more progressive members, what you're going to have is a more core fundamentalist group of Mormons that are going to be just as bigoted and homophobic as they ever were, but now they're not going to have the more progressive attitudes in their local congregations to kind of counterbalance it and be supportive of gay kids, And so I think
I hadn't thought of that.
yeah, so I think that I mean we kind of mentioned this. I think it was last week, or maybe it was in the clip we just read. I can't remember, but the Mormon Church has every right to be as homophobic as they want to be.
Right.
But there is collateral damage. And the collateral damage is going to come in the form of gay teenagers feeling suicidal and not having an outlet, and not having a proper understanding or reliable, scientifically based resources to look into the issue. And it's just going to cause more problems. I hope it doesn't turn into more suicides, but I mean, the Mormon Church really hasn't stepped up to, kind of take care of that issue. Like, they haven't really said anything other than people should be nice to gay people. It's like, but the example that they're giving isn't nice.
Yeah.
Like this policy shows that they have no intention, at least not right now, of being accepting of homosexuals.
Right.
And that's a choice that they've made. But I mean, it's going to hurt people. Oh, anything else you want to add?
Nope.
I feel like we've kind of been beating this dead horse quite a bit.
Yeah.
The last couple episodes have been about Mormon homophobia. I mean, it's just been all over the place here in Utah County.
Yeah, it exploded.
It just exploded. And yeah, so it's a hot button issue. Hopefully it'll die down and we'll have more varied topics to talk about in the future. At least, maybe we'll have some more positive, upbeat stories to share. But for the time being, this is where we're at.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's our show.
Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Remember, you can email us at circlesquaredpodcast@gmail.com or leave us a review on whatever platform you find us on. You can also check out the show's blog at www.circlesquaredpodcast.blogspot.com, and we will see you next time on the Circle Squared Podcast.
Bye.